The title of this panel is You'll Never Believe How This Story Went Viral, so if that's what you wanted to see, you're in the right place. My name is Ankur Thakar. Up until a few weeks ago, I was the City of Chicago's digital director.
What are you doing now, Ankur?
I will be working for Vine.
My name is Jessica Gallier. I am the social media manager for Red Eye, which is a sister publication of the Chicago Tribune.
Great. So the idea of this panel came to me, as I'm sure a lot of social media managers get this, is this request from people that they work with are like, so this thing right here, we need this to go viral, you know? Like direct all your efforts, whatever magic buttons you push, just make it happen. So it got me thinking about what virality actually is. So being the nerd that I am, I started with the definition, noun, the state or condition of being viral. But I think the real definition, or something closer to the truth, is a term used by social media marketers so often that you are rolling your eyes right now. So then I thought, let's go to math. And I thought I'd come up with a loose equation to think through what this means. So you start off with the quality of your content, which if you work on social media exclusively, this is not so much in your control. You know, you're given a story, you're given this piece of information that you have to work with. So then you come in with the clickability of that packaging. So how is it being presented to your online communities? And then through some magic, and with certain stories, you achieve virality. For today's purposes, we're focusing on the clickability. So the things that go completely viral, if you want to imagine a volume knob that reach an 11, that's great. What I want to focus on are the 3s and 4s that you get, and how to do practical things to make sure they get up to 7 and 8. So I hope this is applicable to just day-to-day content, and not just like those special cases. So we thought we'd assemble some tips. I took this from an Upworthy presentation, which is, I think, a year or so old, but it all still applies. With Facebook, I think a lot of people don't realize how endlessly customizable your post is. So you actually have 3 different places in which you can adjust the text. You have the share copy, which everyone knows. You have the headline itself, which comes with a 100-character limit. If the headline of your article is longer than that, you'll get like the ... So we found that, or I found that in that case, I try to adjust it to make sure it fits within the frame of the post. So it just comes up with cleaner copy. Below that, you also have the description itself. So you have 3 different places where the text can work in tandem to entice people to click. One interesting thing they found, which I've also seen, is that on Facebook, if you're using a full URL, people will see it as more trustworthy. They know where they're going to. So if you just use a bit.ly or a shortened URL, that gives people, you know, less of an understanding what website they'll be heading to. And then lastly, I want to talk about the share image. And just let me know if you agree with this, but up until a month ago, our strategy at the City of Chicago has always been to use a photo first and then link to a URL. And that drove significantly more traffic than doing a traditional link post and having the link post pull in a photo. Facebook recently announced that they're going to be adjusting their algorithms and giving more prominence to link posts in an attempt to stay more current and have more news dominate the news feed. So the share image, again, is another thing. Once you do a link post, it'll pull from the website, but that's something else that you can customize. So you can use a higher res image, you can use something that's more striking if you have it. A close-up of a human face is always great. How about at the Red Eye? Do you have a certain technique for Facebook in general?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook's kind of a mystery land for a lot of places, especially Red Eye. We've been struggling a lot with it. Our reach just isn't where it used to be since all the algorithms have been changing. It's very frustrating. But we just keep trying different things. And the thing that I've seen work the best for us recently, despite what Facebook is telling us about posting these link posts instead of a photo post or a status post, those link posts don't do anything for us. The reach will be maybe like 600, and we have about 37,000 Facebook fans, which is incredibly frustrating. But status posts recently have been doing very well for us if the text is good and it entices people to click through and read the story. So, yeah. Okay, here's a good example. This is from Twitter. So I wanted to talk a little bit about visuals in your tweets. How many social media managers are in the room, by the way? I'm trying to get a gauge. Okay. So you guys know that a tweet with a picture will always do better than a tweet without a picture, pretty much all of the time. And this is one very simple example of that. I know it's not a great picture. Nobody cares, but having that picture in that tweet just kind of stops people when they're looking in their Twitter feeds, and it catches their attention for a split second longer, and it does make all the difference. The tweet on the left had 12 retweets, and the tweet on the right had 35, and the click-through was significantly better with the one on the right.
And with Twitter's app and with the web version of it, a photo simply just takes up more real estate. So you're having a lot more space and a lot more of an opportunity for people to see it before they scroll through. So I wanted to talk a bit about hashtags. A lot of research shows that if you use 1 or 2 hashtags, you get as much as 2 times the engagement. Whether that's because of said hashtag or because the tweet is involved in a conversation that's already happening is unclear. But anything more than 2, so 3 to as many as 10 or 15, a lot of people are very adventurous with their hashtags. It doesn't make as much of a difference. I'm a writer by background, and so one of my first things at the mayor's office was to create an unofficial Twitter style guide, and one of the things I included was the simple thing of just putting in hashtag or as much of the link-like elements of Twitter at the end of the tweet, the better, because it's just an easier thing to process for someone to encounter text, and then all of the things they need to understand what to do, what to click on, what hashtag this is, who's involved, as possible to put that towards the end. It just makes for a cleaner reading experience.
If you've ever worked in newspapers, it just looks better too. It's kind of a style or formatting thing, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, here's another example from the Red Eye Twitter account. I hear a lot of people say that, include a question, like some call to action of your readers. But this is an example of when a question does not work, and you're not actually asking them to respond to you or do anything with that question. So we tried this one on the right. This is a story about crime data in Uptown. And we used a question on the left. It just kind of was a dud. Nobody really clicked on it. Nobody read the story. And I just changed the question from a question to a statement. And it made all the difference on the right. That was one of our most read stories of the week, directly from social media. So that's an example that's probably the exception to the rule of always include a question, even though you don't really care what people are going to say in response.
I'm really surprised people were that interested in Chicago and violence.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So this is a great example of when our Little League softball team, Jackie Robinson West, won the Little League World Series, the U.S. version. My colleague and I both tweeted at the exact same time, which is, a little unfortunate, but it allowed us to compete against each other head to head. So mine is on the left, a simple champions, and then a Go 42, because the number 42 is on their caps, and it's Jackie Robinson's number. And my colleague tweeted, "You boys are absolutely amazing. Congratulations, JRW." And she killed me. So it led me to go back the last 2 to 3 weeks, and look at the Jackie Robinson tweets that did the best. And because I'm tweeting from the perspective of a person, we noticed that when tweets included the words like proud, or you're brilliant, or you're amazing, some kind of emotion, they vastly outperformed the other tweets. So I think that if there is any kind of emotive bit to a story that you can pull out and use in your copy, that'll help it perform better. Plus, just I was telling Justice, ROM and emotion was my secret sauce during my tenure with him.
It's funny you bring up the congrats thing because I've heard a lot of people talking about, like, if you just put the word congrats in your Facebook post, just throw it in there, it'll do better. So I just decided to experiment with it, and I think I posted something like, congrats on the weekend, which made no sense whatsoever. And it didn't do shit, it didn't do anything.
You made it.
And I told my editor about it, like, I'm gonna try this thing and it's gonna be so cool, and it did nothing. And she, hey, how'd that thing go? No, it did fine. So it's not always foolproof. You have to just keep experimenting and trying different things, and it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. People will forget about it in not even a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention in the beginning that Laura Olin from OFA was not able to join us, unfortunately. But we kept her slides in there, so she's with us in spirit. She sent this one of her posts, which is just a great family photo. And it kind of mimics what I was talking about before, which is if you can show your principal or somebody in a human situation, geez, that sounds so cold. Try to create human situations. But yeah, as much as you can do that, just people respond to that more.
Emotion is probably the number one core of viral content. So, like you said, hit them in the feels, make them mad, make them sad, make them relate. Anything you can do to make them feel something is going to make your job a lot easier. Okay, this is an example of, we had a story that was kind of a throwaway, quick thing that we did that we thought would be funny. Starbucks started serving these really adorable mini frappuccinos, and we started just, talking around the office about, like, oh, I wish this was mini, I wish this was mini, oh, we have this that's already mini. So someone wrote up a post, like, 15 things, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes I try something a little bit more literal, like you see on the left, like the actual name of the post. But this example on the right is what usually always works out better for us, where I read through the post, first of all, that's something I would definitely recommend. Always read all the way through everything that you're posting. It helps. So I read through this post and I was kind of like, it's okay, it's a decent post. But this one thing that stood out was this little factoid about mini liquor bottles being illegal to sell in Chicago. And I was like, what the hell? I've never heard that before. And it doesn't necessarily have to do a lot with the post. It was just like a little blip in it, but that's what caught my attention. So if I'm trying to catch other people's attention and make this shit go viral, why not trust my gut? I am the audience. I know what's gonna work, and I know my audience. So it did. It worked really well, and it was a longer post, so there was good engagement time on it, which is also very, very important. So I consider that one a small success.
This one was from Laura as well. As many opportunities as you have to create shareable, visually striking pieces of information that people want to promote through their own networks, that will take a message a long way. And then, of course, there's timing.
I remember this one.
Tweet was perfectly timed after Mr. Eastwood's rant, and of course the tweet just took off.
That was one thing I really liked about Laura's team and the work that they did on social media for the Obama campaign, was that you kind of got to a point where they were so consistent with what they were doing that you expected them to respond to everything that you wanted them to respond to. So consistency is a huge thing, I think, in your social strategy, that people can always rely on you to jump in at some point in a relevant and meaningful way, not in an exploitative way,
She also submitted this as luck, so the strategy that you've seen of consistently appealing to celebrities with large followings occasionally will work. Why
Yeah.
Katy Perry chose to retweet this, I won't know, but.
Perez Hilton does that a lot. If you notice that whenever he tweets anything, he directs it at the celebrity that he's talking crap about. I don't think it ever works out for him, ever, but it might work for you, so you should try it.
So up until this infamous selfie was tweeted, Laura had the distinction of having the most retweeted tweet in Twitter history on the night of the president's election. It was a picture of the president and the first lady, and the caption was 4 more years. And that held the crown until this one. So I think she had to include this in the presentation to say sometimes you just get a bunch of celebrities together and that'll make a piece of content take off.
That's easy.
Yeah. All right, so here's the part where we have even more fun. I don't know how many of you saw, the New York Times put out an interactive quiz earlier this year in which you compete against an algorithm to pretty much test your Twitter know-how, to guess between 2 versions of tweets that went out, which one performed better. So we grabbed a few of those and thought we could do this together now. Can everyone read this?
We can read it to you if you want.
So how many people think it was the tweet on the left? A show of hands.
You guys aren't sure. You don't know.
So everyone thinks it was the tweet on the right?
Okay.
You'll be right. Why was everyone so sure?
Anybody?
If anyone wants to jump in.
Barack Obama had one that's off-putting and treaty to it, and when you look at the other one, vote Barack Obama is more subtle. Is that a big one?
I also think that including a URL in an uttered expression is inherently awkward, right? Yeah. Show of hands for the tweet on the left. All right. And the tweet on the right? Significantly more for the left. You guys are right again. Why do you guys think that the tweet on the left did better?
Why?
Story, colon, it's kind of weird.
Uh-huh.
It's just not stating it obvious.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, it's also the tweet on the left has a much more important fact that people would want to share, whereas the tweet on the right, they'll broadcast the Pacers preseason games in Manila and Taipei live. It's just not as...
Nobody cares about the preseason.
Right. Though people do care about the Pacers, I'm told.
Oh, God. Is this going to turn into a sports thing? I don't want to talk about this.
Show of hands for the tweet on the left. And the tweet on the right. More people on the right.
Ooh.
Significantly more on the left. Any thoughts on why? Mm-hmm.
The word reveals is like a teaser. That word more.
It's a little less wordy, too,
Right. Yeah. It's also, I think the pertinent information, a lot of people might just not know that it's Google's 15th year. So to make that the declarative Hemingway-esque first just fact is clear for people to understand instead of making it a sentence with a clause. Show of hands for the tweet on the left. And the tweet on the right? Everyone. You guys are right. Who wants to talk about why? In the back?
Go for it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And when you look at it, telling people on the internet that doors are open, it's not something that they can really step into, right? Like you're not waiting outside checking Twitter for
Where is it? Where's the
where
door?
the door's open. So a clear directive like watch just makes a lot more sense. All right, last one. the tweet on the left, the tweet on the right, vast majority. This one really surprised me.
What happened? What do you think?
I'm sorry? Right.
Do you think people stop reading, like on the right, if they don't know who Edward Snowden is, they just kind of stop reading, maybe? Yeah.
People look at this from now, but this was in 2013 when he was quite a national name. I remember this was also the first time he actually stepped into any kind of public sphere. So the fact that he was meeting today with human rights, which doesn't sound very interesting now,
Right.
at that point, being the first time we actually saw him post exile of Russia was very interesting.
Mhm.
Today, you may think the right tweet would be more interesting at that time, when that tweet was going.
That's a
Absolutely.
really good point.
Yeah.
Question, actually, do you think it makes a difference that they sourced it? Thinking that it said Moscow Airport Say.
I don't think that makes a difference in this case.
Yeah.
It might in some cases, though, for sure.
I think the position of the word leaker in particular, which is a word you don't see very often, is one to grab your attention. I have this theory that Vladimir Nabokov, the author, would use disorientation to have you see something in a complete unique way, using what some would consider his attempts at understanding English, but they would turn out to be poetic expressions of everyday objects. And as much as you can introduce a disorienting mindset into Twitter, anything to grab someone's attention away from what they see as just standard operating practice, it serves you a great deal. Pictures are one way, but I'm still on team words, and I think you can do it with words. So words that you would not commonly find, or if your story contains, an object that you can, describe differently, just things that you wouldn't, like Twitter is evolving as we're evolving, and we're sort of creating this lexicon of, how to tweet certain things. So the most obvious example is, a robot account that just takes each headline and tweets that out. But you find that if you take the time and break away from that and sort of try to word things differently, and to always be evolving, that would be, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
We were talking the other day in our office about all these words that editors use that real life normal people do not use. And we find those in our stories all the time. And I feel like if you're a good social media manager, your job is to use none of those words and still do your tweets and your posts in an ethical way. Your job is to kind of translate things to get people into the story, if that makes sense. I try not to use editor jargon in tweets, despite how many editors will insist that if you use this as the tweet, it'll go bonkers.
Well, and the tweet that you had in an early example, where you posed a question versus a statement, you posed a question, and then I'm sure you had to add as the data suggests, which immediately I think was
Absolutely.
like, well, the data already suggests it.
Right.
So
Right.
what are we doing? That brings us to the end of our presentation. We'd love to keep talking. Any more questions?
Does anyone know if in the previous tweet quiz, it had all caps on watch, word watch? I wonder if anyone knows if that's particularly effective in finding that for videos.
Yeah.
For video? Mm-hmm.
So I've used that specifically with any kind of live stream, and I will become, a little horrible about it and put like brackets around it. I'll keep changing it month to month. Anything to sort of not have people glaze over it. So all caps is great. You can use other punctuation marks as well.
I would say that breaking is the exception to the rule. That was kind of the norm for a long time, I think, or what people thought that users wanted. But it's become so common to put breaking, 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 and everything that was not breaking. TV stations do this a lot, where they'll 2 hours later be like, breaking, and it happened 2 hours ago, dude, you're wrong. I think Twitter users are getting so glazed over with breaking. They don't want to see that anymore. So I would say experiment with different ways to do that if you really do have breaking news.
In the back?
Yeah, you talked at the beginning about how Facebook's changed, so they switched from kind of the image model to the link model. You know, over the past months, as you said, I think a lot of us who do this kind of thing see that a number of people, even as, you know, Facebook increases the reach.
Did everyone hear that question?
Honestly, I say move on. Facebook isn't going to change unless you make it change. I've kind of taken that approach at Red Eye that Facebook used to be our main social referring traffic driver. Now it's like almost not, it's nothing almost, which is really, it's really frustrating. So I've put less of my time into developing strategy for Facebook and posting on Facebook and more into Twitter or Tumblr, maybe Ello, this new thing that's starting up. I don't know, we'll see. I know a lot of organizations are doing microsites now instead of, they're taking the time that they used to put into Facebook and making microsites. You know, if it's not, I feel like if the payout is not worth it and you don't have money to give to Facebook, which we don't do paid social posting at Red Eye, we don't have the money for it. Put your attention elsewhere. Try something else. You know, maybe it'll come back, but I don't think it will, honestly, personally. I don't know what you think.
That's pretty much it. I mean, working for the city, we also, I was not in a position to justify using taxpayer dollars to make Facebook ads. So we definitely saw a similar decline. And the best weapons against fading into irrelevancy on Facebook are a lot of the techniques that we talked about today. If Facebook as a company makes the decision that they won't show anything you do unless you pay for it, then I imagine there will be a large exodus from that service.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like, your opinion on using humor in social and, like, its role in helping spread messages. Like, I remember last winter here in Chicago where it was, like, negative 30 degrees, and I think the Tribune was like, we love this weather, said no one ever. Like, it just went crazy, you know, and I liked it, and I never like stuff. Like non-likers, so I'm trusting me, and I'm not gonna like you. So I'm wondering, like, you know, working for the city of Chicago, and I think Red Eye, you might have the ability to do some of that. Would you encourage, like, news organizations to try to input humor into social when they can?
It's a really good point. She's asking how much can humor play a part in your organization if you don't necessarily have the legroom to do so, or if you're working with very serious topics in a way.
I think with your organization, it's about finding the line that makes sense. I worked for a man who people find quite funny in a certain way, maybe not in a way that I could put online, but you know, once I embraced that position as working for the city at large, like, so we handled the polar vortex by making these really ugly Valentine cards with pictures of Chicago in the summer, kind of just begging summer to just please, like, we miss you, we love you. And that was really funny. People got like a big laugh out of that. So I was able to do that without betraying sort of our mission at large.
Red Eye can kind of do whatever the hell it wants because we're just like, we were kind of an experiment from the beginning, and we didn't grow our social reach or our followings until we started being funnier and having a sense of humor and a sense of self-awareness. I can see that some other organizations might not have that though, and to that I say, don't worry so much about being humorous or funny, just be relatable, you know, let people know that you're a person. Red Eye is funny sometimes. I'm not always funny, but
I think you're always funny.
oh, thanks. But I get a lot of people tweeting us, being like, "Who runs the Red Eye account? Who are you?" And they just want to know that you're a person and that you're not some headline robot. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be funny. You just have to be relatable, I think.
To add to that, don't make light of the misfortunes of others.
Right.
It's easy to do in a news environment, but you know, their family will see it.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right.
You will be told if you are not funny, which is it's nice. It's a good.
Usually pretty directly, right?
Yes.
I did not laugh at this as a
No.
Twitter reply. Any other questions? Up front?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that it's varied across all of the industry. I mean, trying to think of an example. I think we were just at the NPR panel with Melody Kramer, and they're like all of their traffic comes from Facebook. No, our demographic on Facebook has stayed about the same, and we're still gaining new likes all the time, and we don't get a lot of unlikes either, which I was very perplexed about. The majority of Red Eye's Facebook followers are women, late 20s, early 30s, actually. It used to be when I started in their 50s, so that was a really crappy transition, let me tell you. But when I started, and we really just started putting more effort into Facebook, this was 4 years ago, you could tell when we had posted something on Facebook because the traffic just went through the roof, and it stayed there all day long. Now, our reach will be literally 200 people will see this post sometimes. But I still get those damn notifications from Facebook like, you should boost this post. You should boost this post.
What's your credit card number?
I know. I'm like, do you have a credit card that you want to give me to pay for this? Because my boss says no.
I think a more revealing metric than traffic, or another metric to look at, is the percentage of people that have seen it compared to your total community. And if that number is rising, then I would be very surprised, because that has decreased steadily for us.
Have any of you in this room seen a huge drop-off in the last year? Yeah. Anyone seen it go up? What are you guys
Well
doing?
done.
Focusing more on it? Yeah.
We have, I'm from Israel, and during the war in the summer, massive increase.
Mm-hmm.
I customize every single post that goes out. We post everything, and I customize the sentence that goes above
Right.
the article.
Right. That definitely makes a huge difference. What else?
Should we always, do you think we should always have the status comment at the top, or sometimes not? Because I often see, I don't know, Nashville or something on Facebook, and they don't put anything at the very top of all the, photos.
Would you say should there always be like sharing copy?
Yeah.
I think that really depends on what's working or not for you. If you're adding something of value in that box, then go for it. But if it's the kind of thing where you're just repeating exactly what's being said, it might not do as much.
I would say to always include something if you can. I think it's important. And you can have the copy play off of the headline that you customize, like she mentioned, in the link post. I think that's a nice thing. I think that Gawker does a really good job of that. If you guys follow Gawker on Facebook, they're a good example of playing one thing off of another. Like, I couldn't imagine seeing the post without the copy at the top, the way that they do it. And I click on a lot of their stuff. So, yeah.
You should boost your posting. Does it work? And how?
So that's Facebook asking you to purchase placement. I can't speak to that over the last 3 years because I just haven't been able to do it.
We have done it a handful of times for whenever we have like an event going on and they need to make money on it, So we'll put $30 as our budget. Facebook lets you do a budget, and all it does is get it a larger reach. It actually makes it show up in people's news feeds. So that's frustrating. If you pay, you can actually get your post seen by a big chunk of your fans, or until your budget runs out, basically.
But did it actually bring more reach?
It did, yeah. I don't think it did enough to warrant selling my soul like that. I felt really shitty about it.
You find that when we boost a post, we'll get a ton of views on that post, we'll get likes and clicks, and that article will get a ton of traffic. The next article tanks just as fast on the other.
Right. Yep.
It doesn't give us lasting value.
Right.
Right.
That's a very good point. What else?
How do you work with like timing and schedule? And what sort of effect do you see from that? Like the slide before, is it like one is at 9 a.m. and one is at
2:40 in the morning.
Yeah.
2 a.m.?
If you notice, the 240 one did better. That's funny. This is where analytics come into play. As a social media person in your newsroom, you should know everything about the analytics of your content. You should work very closely with your web editor, and you should be looking at the analytics of how everything is doing every day and where it came from. You should be looking at the insights on Facebook, which have gotten a lot better, even though Facebook sucks. But
So for me, a lot of times I would reschedule. I would schedule certain posts to just go off in the early morning just to see, and occasionally we would get like a huge lift on that, and it vastly outperformed whenever we tweeted it during the day. My thinking on that is that night Twitter has evolved into its own,
yeah.
into its own, and I'm not talking about the global perspective, just Chicago, right? Night Twitter can sometimes devolve into a lot of funny and conversations, and to inject something with substance, sometimes it's just what the children of the night needed to see.
You have to know your audience too, and what their behaviors are on a day-to-day basis. We've done a couple of research studies, and we found that a lot of Red Eye readers, of course, are commuters, because that's how they know us, is from our print product, which is at most train stations around town. So what are people doing on the train? They used to be reading Red Eye. What are they doing now? They're looking on their phone. So I try to guess, like, okay, when are people going to be on the train going to work? That's when I'm going to hit them hard on Twitter. Like every 5 minutes, I'm going to post something that they need to know for their day. Not something that they're going to have to spend a lot of time with, because they have to get off the train in a few minutes. It has to be something that will help them get through their day a little bit. And then at night, we can have fun with video stuff and longer pieces because these same people are probably watching TV shows and also on their computer or on their phone. So experiment with that a little bit, really get in the heads of your followers and what their needs are, I would say, as far as timing goes, if that answers your question.
Do you use any scheduling tools? Like we use Hootsuite, and that has an auto schedule function that I guess algorithms what our engagement is and when we get that.
Those aren't foolproof, but they're helpful for sure. Crowd Booster is a good tool, and it's very cheap or free, I think. It'll recommend your tweets do best at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. and those are nice to have, but I wouldn't totally live off of them. Crowd Booster, yeah.
Any more questions? Great question. Vine is sort of a unique social platform in that the 7 most popular Vine accounts are Vine famous, and that's it. They're not celebrities in any other right. So it's become very top heavy with these accounts. So they're sort of experimenting with bringing in an editorial team to look through content and create communities around more engaging, more diverse, different kinds of content. So I'll be heading that experiment for a period of time, and then we're going to reevaluate to see if it's worth it or not. I think Twitter had its Arab Spring moment when it became something more than 140 characters, and Vine's looking for that, something more than 6 seconds of video.
I can share a quick story about the power of social media and virality, if you want.
Yeah.
So if you're a social media manager and you're trying to talk to your editors or your reporters about what people respond to on social media, and they're like, I don't want to do that, I want to go work on this thing. I don't know if you guys have the luxury of doing this kind of stuff, but at Red Eye, I kind of get to experiment a lot as a social media manager as long as I don't get us in legal trouble or be a total jerk. I kept pitching this story to our editors about sexual harassment on the CTA because it's a big problem. And I know that our audience really cares about it because our audience is just like me, and I really care about it. I think it's a huge issue. There was a news story that came out a couple months ago about a man who masturbated onto a woman on the Brown line. It's a horrible, disgusting story, and that went viral because it was a crazy news story. We were totally serious in the way that we promoted it. We did not promote it in a lighthearted way. But I took the opportunity when promoting that story to create conversation with our readers of, hey, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever seen this happen on the train before? And we got flooded with stories on Twitter. And I didn't ask to do that. And what I did was I copy-pasted every single tweet, and I sent it to my editor, and I said, hey, accept my pitch, write this story I've been pitching for a month because people really care about it, and it's going to take off, and people are going to read it. A month later, the story came out. We did a feature on it. And people remembered us collecting those stories from the first time. And they were thanking us for covering it. And we had like a trending hashtag, actually, for a couple days. And I think that's a really good example of something that's not a cat video. It's not something that's not important. It's very important to our readers in Chicago. And I basically use social media to get my way of getting this story in the paper because it was really important, I thought, to our audience.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming out. I know we finished a little early. I'll be around if you guys want to chat.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
thank you.